What would you do if you were surrounded, alone, and on the cold floor with blood in your mouth, your heart pounding in your ears, while 3 men laughed over you? Would you beg? Would you cry? Or would you get up? This is the story of how a quiet nurse, who never once raised her voice in anger, got knocked to the ground by bullies, and stood up, gripping nothing but a broken chair leg, and a reason to fight. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Community Hospital hummed softly above the dimly lit break room. Emma Lane sat at the table, a half-empty thermos of coffee in front of her, her body still aching from a double shift. She had been a nurse here for 8 years, steady, calm, always the one who stayed late when others went home. She wasn't the type to make enemies. Or so she thought. But that Thursday night, things changed. It started with raised voices down the hall. Emma glanced up from her charting, 3 men, mid-20s, swaggering in like they owned the place. They weren't patients. They weren't visitors. The smell of cheap beer followed them, along with an arrogance that filled the space before their bodies did. "Where's Marcus?" the tallest one barked. His eyes were glassy, but the anger behind them was sharp. Emma didn't know who Marcus was, but she recognized the tone, someone looking for trouble. "Sir, this is a hospital. You can't just..." She began, but before she could finish, the shortest one shoved a chair out of his way, sending it clattering against the wall. They weren't listening. They were pacing, muttering to each other. Emma stood her ground. "If you don't leave right now, I'll have to call security." That was the wrong sentence. The tallest one stepped closer, close enough that Emma could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Security," he sneered. "Lady, do you think we're scared of some rent-a-cop?" She barely had time to react before a heavy shove sent her stumbling back. Her hip hit the corner of the counter hard. Pain shot through her, but she didn't fall, until the second shove came, harder, with the weight of someone who wanted her on the ground. Her knees buckled, and suddenly she was there, on the cold linoleum floor, palms stinging, coffee spilling beside her. The laughter above her was like nails in her ears. One of them kicked the leg of a chair toward her, the wooden piece snapping clean in half. "Oops," he grinned, "guess someone's having a bad day." Emma's vision swam. She could taste iron. Somewhere in the back of her mind, an old memory flashed, her father's voice, telling her when she was 12, "You never stay down, Em. Not for anyone." She wrapped her fingers around the splintered chair leg. It was heavier than she expected. She wasn't thinking about what she'd do with it, she was thinking about what it meant to hold it. It meant she wasn't done. Not yet. She pushed herself up slowly, every muscle protesting. The 3 men exchanged glances, half amused, half surprised that she wasn't crying. "You should leave," she said, her voice lower now, almost steady. They laughed again. But something shifted in the air. It wasn't the words, it was the way she stood. Shoulders squared. Blood still on her lip. Chair leg gripped like she knew how to use it. The middle one stepped forward. Or what? Emma's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She didn't answer. Instead, she moved, just 1 step forward, but enough to close the space. Enough to show she wasn't frozen anymore. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" The voice came from behind them. Officer Daniels, hospital security, older and broad-shouldered, had stepped into the doorway. The bullies turned, startled. One of them muttered something under his breath, and within seconds, they were backing out, tossing curses over their shoulders. Emma's knees almost gave out when they were gone. She lowered the chair leg, her hands trembling. "Are you okay?" Daniels asked, his voice softer now. Emma took a breath. I think so." But in her mind, something new had settled, a stubborn fire she hadn't felt in years. The hospital board later reviewed the footage. The men were banned from the premises and later arrested for trespassing and assault. But that was just the surface. What stayed with Emma wasn't the moment they knocked her down, it was the moment she decided she would stand back up. She started self-defense classes the following week, not because she planned to fight, but because she refused to feel powerless again. Months later, she'd stand in front of a group of young nurses during orientation and tell them, "You'll have nights where you feel small. You'll be outnumbered. You'll think there's no one coming to help you. But hear me, you have more strength than you know." The night they knocked me down was the night I learned to stand taller than I ever had before. And as she set down her coffee and picked up her patient charts, Emma Lane smiled, not because the world had changed, but because she had. Sometimes life knocks you down. Sometimes people do. But the choice to stand back up, that's where your story changes. And the tools you need, they might already be in your hands.